pulled out the divorced mom pop and heard this banger today. Great song. It just makes me laugh when she gets to 10,000 spoons. Because that was the first time I ever heard that bit was from Neil Cicierega. Now, I just drank some lemonade, so I got a lot of phlegm draining down in my throat. It's very discouraging because I gotta make audio narrations at some point, and it's gonna be very hard to be in the microphone like this, and then you have to be hearing. Is that a pleasant thing to hear, especially when you gotta listen to something for hours? But speaking of that audiobook project, I was just recently watching a video from my boy Captain Kuba talking about God of War cutscene leaks. Somebody went into the code and they found some cutscene that got scrapped or something or other. But basically, the content of the cutscene, from the very small amount that I gleaned of it, was that Atreus was interacting with Athena and the Egyptian god Ra. And he was calling him like Mao or something like that. It was basically a form that Ra takes in Egyptian mythology, right? And then Ra was talking to Atreus and saying the white snake will eat you, dude. And there's only one significant snake in Egyptian mythology that is what's it called? It's a snake, and that's Apep. Okay? And I was just listening to all this, and immediately I was thinking, like, holy shit, this is exactly what I had envisioned, and is in fact the case in my God of War story series I'm doing. You know, Dreams of the Vengeful and Dreams of Perfection. Because Dreams of the Vengeful and Dreams of Perfection are kind of set off in their own, like, kind of. They have this hidden story in the background before either of these stories take place, because they both are centered in Norse mythology, but in my story, I didn't want it to be the case that, oh, Atreus just stays in the Norse realm the whole time. No, obviously he's going to go out. And where does he go? He goes to Egypt, right? And so I just wanted to break that down here today, so because I just find it interesting and cool, and also because I came up with this really cool art thing. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay, I got them pulled up. Anyway, but this is the AI design I used, and I don't like AI designs. I don't like AI art because it can make stuff that looks cool and can get across what you want, but it's always going to be missing soul in a way, right? And it's also going to be filled with errors that can't really be made proper. But this is, and this one also wasn't even like one of the more high effort designs I even put through. I literally just put in for this one, like, I compiled a bunch of God of War concept art, and then I added in for this one. I took what's the guy's name? How did I forget his name? He's the assassin protagonist in Assassin's Creed Origin. How did I forget his name? What? Bayek. I took Bayek's design because I was like, okay, I just need, because in Dreams of the Perfection, this Apophis is gonna pop up in like a memory sort of. And I was like, okay, well, I need design, and I have it. I don't want to put too much work into it because it's just going to be for a very brief appearance. But then we popped out this, and it took me just a little bit of work messing around with his face and other stuff. And it largely gets exactly the point I want across for what I want Apophis to look like. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. What exactly is the story for God of War Egypt with Atreus and Apophis? Well, to get to that, I want to really establish, I think the best direction that God of War can go is to focus on Atreus, and to really establish that not only is he Loki, but that he, like Loki, is sort of an archetypal character throughout all of mythologies all throughout the world. In all mythologies, there's always the guy who exists solely to disrupt things and fuck things up and set change in motion, okay? The chaos deity, if you will. It's even the reason why in my series I explicitly call Atreus the god of chaos, not the god of mischief, right? Because he's supposed to be the guy who sets changes in motion, all right, in a rather hectic way. And so I was thinking that if we're gonna have Atreus be the center of the God of War series, he should be the guy going through all these different pantheons, being that pantheon's god of chaos. And if we're going to Egypt, who's the god of chaos there? It's Set, okay? And Set, he already is a character who's the foreign god. He's literally called the foreign god. He's depicted as a strange wolf-like creature. So, and it's the chaos deity who sets changes in motion and is viewed as somebody who, is kind of against the gods in the pantheon, but also not really. This is once again, this is a rudimentary level. I haven't really delved deep into Set and Egyptian mythology. But this is like the core dynamic, right? And so I was thinking like, okay, well, I want to have, and I wanted to have Atreus just sort of have a little offhanded exchange in Dreams of the Vengeful basically saying, hey, this is something that he did in the Egypt pantheon. This is a little something that people would read and go, oh, he did that? Wow, that's interesting. But then I kind of started to develop this idea more, and so this is kind of the loose idea I had. So that, but what basically would happen is that Atreus, he'd go to Egypt in search of the giants, right? And then he would stumble across the pantheon that's there, and the pantheon in Egypt would be kind of, very reminiscent of the Greek pantheon we see in God of War, the original trilogy, where it's all these hoity-toity gods kind of using all the people and the mortals below them as just means to an end, right? And then Atreus would stumble across this guy, Apophis, and he would basically style himself and frame himself as, a rebel against this, tyrannical pantheon that's putting the people down. Atreus would then help Apophis out, and Apophis would probably help him out as well in trying to get his pursuit and trying to find the giants, And also, I bet at some point in this story, Angrboda would show up because, we got to have Angrboda in Atreus' romance be expanded upon from Ragnarok, right? And so then she would bring with her Fenrir, and I think having Atreus be basically working alongside Apophis, who is Apep, who in Egyptian mythology is this basically giant chaos snake god that just serves to try to destroy the world over and over again. And so, and the people would then start calling this new guy that's working alongside Apep, okay, the foreign god, Set, right? Because Atreus, he can transform. His only notable transformations are like a bear and a wolf, and now he's got this giant wolf traveling with him. So people are going to start to symbolically represent him with this weird wolf-like thing that they've never really seen before because they live in the desert. They don't know what a giant wolf from whatever looks like. But anyway. And then this would go on for a while until Atreus would probably figure out at some point, hey, Apophis, dude, you're like getting like really violent, dude. You're kind of crazy. And he'd be like, whatever, man. We got to make these people pay. But then, you'd keep on going until eventually we get to this point in the original mythology of Egyptian mythology where Apophis, would try to set out to destroy Ra, the sun god, the ultimate authority in the Egyptian pantheon, like the Zeus in the God of War Egypt mythology pantheon, right? And Atreus would be like, yeah, no, dude, we can't be destroying the sun. Like, sure, like, Ra sucks. He's like a dictator or whatever. But, like, we can't be destroying the sun and killing all these innocent people. And Apophis would be like, well, dude, fuck these people, man. It's their worship for this guy that even got them into this position in the first place. So it's very much clear that Apophis is just kind of out for himself. He's kind of fucked in the head or whatever. And then Atreus, he would then have to fight him. He'd fight this big giant snake form that he would adopt in the finale. I'm picturing Apophis would have a tiering of transformations, very similar to Bigby in The Wolf Among Us, okay, where it's not like he just becomes like human but with hair and claws. He then has that higher form where he becomes an actual like real like big beast werewolf, kind of like you see in Skyrim. And then at the very end, he can actually transform into the actual giant wolf form. So Apophis would be the same thing, except instead of wolf, it would be a snake. So it'd start out like its human form, and then he would have a form that's more similar to Reptile in Mortal Kombat. And then it would turn into the giant snake form. And I imagine the boss fight would be like really cool. It'd be probably during an eclipse. And maybe there'd be a pyramid coming out of the earth, and Atreus would be running up it. It'd be very similar to, like, I'd imagine the God of War 2018 boss battle where you're fighting on this giant. I'd really emphasize that more. And then, of course, Atreus kills Apophis, and then Ra would come down from the heavens and be like, hey, yo, dude, thanks for, like, saving my life and stopping me from being killed. But, like, you gotta go, dude. Like, and Atreus would be like, yeah, I know, I know. The whole best message would be like, yeah, these people, these gods, the pantheons of Egypt, is corrupt and all, but all of Atreus' efforts in helping Apophis has only brought about greater chaos and turmoil for all the people living here, And then Atreus would then walk away from Egypt empty-handed. He wouldn't have found the giants. He would have only caused a bunch of chaos and destruction for the Egyptian pantheon, and he would basically just walk back to the Norse realm with his tail between his legs, basically saying, hey, ending with the same conclusion he had come Ragnarok. Because, in Ragnarok, Atreus' whole thing was he went into that story believing he's the champion. He's the one who is destined for greatness. He's the one who's going to save the day and lead everybody to whatever. But then as the narrative went on, he found out, oh, I'm not. The giants are all gone. They're not in Jotunheim anymore. Well, he kind of already knew. But then we're sitting here thinking, oh well, maybe they're gonna come back, or there's gonna be some big time travel shenanigans. Nope. Okay, well maybe Atreus is gonna lead the army of the dead because that's what Loki did in the original myth. Nope. Okay, so maybe and then it gets revealed he's not even the champion; it's actually his father. And then they think, okay, well we have to destroy Ragnarok, we have to destroy Asgard. And in the original script, which is what I like to stick to, Atreus literally lies to Surtur and Sinmara and gets them killed to enact his vengeance upon Odin. Very much in the line and same line of thinking of Kratos in God of War 3. And then, of course, he finds out at the end of all this, like, oh, his whole belief that his father had instilled in him after killing Heimdall, that, oh, the ends justify the means, essentially, which is, hey, close your heart to the suffering, all these other things. Like, this is the only way things had to be done. Like, he had to lie to Surtur and Samara. It was the only way. He had to kill all these Asgardians. It was the only way. He had to destroy the realm. It was the only way. But, of course, that's why in the script, this is, once again, what the original script of God of War Ragnarok is all about, what the original character arc of Atreus is all about. But they had to cut all that because Eric Williams was just not that great of a director for God of War Ragnarok. And they cut all that, and we just kind of see snippets of it. That's why Atreus goes to Odin when Odin's saying, I have to know. This is the only way. I had to kill my son. And Atreus is like, no, there's always another way. You don't want to know why Atreus is saying that? It's because he believed like Odin. Like, seriously, just look at the moment. It's supposed to be a moment you see all the time in movies where the main character tells the lesson they learned to the villain in a remorseful way as they've, in this moment, realized the mistakes they've made. Atreus in this moment is a guy who at one point in time thought the ends justify the means, just like Odin, but now he's going to him and saying, oh, I cocked up, right? But because in the story they cut out that whole entire section of Atreus deliberately killing Surtur and Samara, and then deliberately going into Ragnarok, okay, and getting all these people killed, all right, and going into Ragnarok not with some positive, like, hey, we're going to save the day attitude. He went into Ragnarok in the original script with a vindictive, vengeful attitude to really communicate to the audience, like, hey, yeah, this isn't good. That's why in the original, the script we have right now in God of War Ragnarok, it's not that satisfying. Because you go into that ending and you get to the big revelation scene where Kratos and Atreus realize, oh my gosh, these refugees from Midgard, they're getting killed, right? And this is played in the game as a big significant moment. But I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, Atreus and Kratos haven't undergone any changes in their character mentality or morality that would make them, against or feel like suddenly remorseful. Like, they're already at this point in the story pretty nice guys. And so if they see a bunch of innocent people dying, they're going to feel bad about it. So that the story playing this up as some big shock and turning point moment, it just falls flat because the characters have not shifted in such a way to where them reacting in such a manner is significant. It's not. Of course Atreus is going to be emotional about seeing all these people be upset. In fact, it just doesn't make any sense character-wise for him in that moment to say, oh, close your heart to it. In the original script, it makes sense because he actively was saying close your heart to it and hardening himself up for this position, except then when he got to this moment, he was, actually then starting to feel guilt and he's trying to push that away as he's been doing. Anyway, I'm getting beside myself. But yeah, so Atreus, he's all of Ragnarok is him thinking he's something special, and then he fails and only causes a destruction. So then he says, okay, well, I'm going to head out into the outer realms to find meaning and to, fulfill my destiny and save the giants and find them. And then he does the same thing again. He nearly destroys an entire pantheon and doesn't even find the giants. And he walks away being remembered as the chaos god. Okay? And so that's where we begin in Dreams of the Vengeful, my story. Where now Atreus is in a position where he's like, well, I gotta find these giants, dude, because the only thing I've ever done in my life is cause chaos and destruction. And while my father, is out here being the new god of war and everybody's like looking at him with reverence and respect, and that's not really true, it's just Atreus viewing it from this biased lens, he's of course feeling immense amount of inadequacy and a lot of discontent. He's growing estranged from his father now because his father's doing all the stuff that he wants to be doing, and so that's pursuing him. That's what causes Atreus to recklessly pursue this goal in Dreams of the Vengeful of finding Odin's brothers, so that one of them, I think Ve, can help him find the giants, right? And then this leads into the whole other story. You know, we got Valley, we got Vidar, we got Hermod, and all this other stuff. I scratched the mic there. Sorry about that. But yeah, you know, I'm just trying to stay passionate about my story because that's very important when you're writing. You actually kind of got to stay passionate about your work. But it's also important to just keep working even when you're not passionate, to kind of detach yourself from the overall experience and basically view it like no different than a blue collar job where you're just like, yeah, I just do it to fucking do it. Now I can't do that unfortunately because I'm a rookie noob who doesn't even read a lot of books anyway before this. So who knows? But yeah, I've kind of forsaken the whole notion of, oh well, I gotta make sure I get this book out before the next God of War game. No, forget that. I'm just doing this for me really because I want to get good at writing so that I could actually tell even more stories down the line that are of my own IP. But anyway, that's just my thing. Just in quick summary, Atreus goes to Egypt. He works alongside Apophis. They become good friends, and then he finds out, oh no, Apophis is a crazy asshole, and then he fights him. The whole pantheon considers him the chaos god Set, and then he gets kicked out after saving Ra from Apophis and killing him. So, anyway, that's my idea, and I think it's cool how it seems that the devs at Santa Monica also seem to be having that same exact idea right now, where Atreus is talking to Ra, and Ra is talking about how his big significant opponent is going to be a big white snake. Oh, what do you know? Just like my story. And then in Dreams of the Perfection, we get a full, you know, you don't see any of Apophis in Dreams of the Vengeful, but Dreams of Perfection, I bring him in, and you actually get to see him in action. It's pretty cool and sick, and it's a big, it's a really satisfying moment. Let me see what else. Let me show you some other stuff I got. Just a little bit of artwork for what I got. You know, we got right here. We got Forsetti's design. Okay, I'm really happy with how this one turned out because this is like I originally for Atreus's design and Forsetti's design, I commissioned out the artwork to a guy and I paid him some price. Probably, I think it was like some Vietnamese or Taiwanese guy to do the artwork, and then I put it through the AI network thing to get it to the more realistic art style. I'm really happy with how Forsetti looks because the whole entire goal of Forsetti's design is to basically be, hey, it's Heimdall, right? But a little bit more rugged, essentially, because that's kind of who he is. Because Heimdall was, oh, I have gold teeth, I'm the Allfather's lapdog, oh, I'm so high and mighty, I'm Mr. Asgard. Where, you know, Forsetti, the guy who's, you know, the son of Balder, a guy who's very rugged and crazy, he's a lot. He's got this cloak that's not very all that refined. His clothes, they're nice, but they're not perfectly pristine and clean. You know, he's got this well trimmed hair to where he kind of looks like he's put together, but he's not trying to be ornate, you know. And the whole entire reason behind that is because he's the first opponent that Atreus fights, and since we haven't seen Atreus's game yet, and my story is kind of like I'm approaching it from, okay, this is the first time we're gonna see Atreus really fight somebody and do anything. I'm like, okay, well, let's make him closer to his original rival. Because once again, I understand Ragnarok they're put in a tough spot because they have to say, okay, we want to give Kratos a fight with Heimdall because he's the only other significant Aesir god we got for him. Now that's bullshit. We had a bunch of others you didn't do. But Heimdall in mythology and in the game was already a rival of Loki. So why didn't Atreus like be the one to do him in? Well, I understand because Heimdall is really tough, but you understand what I'm saying. So making his first real opponent be somebody who's similar to Heimdall in personality, it's kind of fulfilling what Ragnarok set up as him beating this type of rival. This is a Atreus design. I'm not the most happy with it. I've tried my best to get it more in line with the other designs and their overall presentation, but this is the best I really got. And this one, like, literally is comprised of me literally just taking armor bits from Atreus's Ragnarok armors, his champion armor, and his default survival tunic, and just meshing them together. And then I told the artist, hey, age up his face a little bit and adjust his body structure. And you can see his arms like really like way too fucking big, and the face is all goofy too. I also wanted to give him a slight goatee. I don't want to give him the giant goatee that Kratos had, but the reason that I gave him this goatee in the story is because Dreams of the Vengeful, he's combating a lot of problems that Kratos dealt with in the past, namely like rage and how that rage can empower you but also cause destruction around you. So I wanted to have him have this signature trait of Kratos, because there's even a scene in the story in which Kratos looks at it and he kind of like goes, what is this, dude? Because he kind of can sense like, uh-oh, Atreus is going down the wrong path here, you know? So, but yeah, I overall, I kind of like it. It's nothing too crazy. I think I do much better with his Dreams of Perfection design. Vidar, I think I knocked out the park with Vidar. Went crazy, dude. He went through so many different iterations. I had to build him from the ground up, taking that. I took the image, I took the standing pose of the mountain from Game of Thrones, okay, and I had to completely redo his legs so that they were framed in proper. That's why they look kind of long. And then I took his face, and his face is actually that. What's the guy? He's this dude he's like really jacked and buff, but he's very flexible and does ninja content online. I can't remember. You can probably all figure him out online. But I took his face because I thought I really liked his beard and that more cropped hairstyle. Now this iteration, it kind of ended up where his beard ended up not that thick as it was, but I do quite enjoy it. And but the main thing I really enjoy is just that lower leg pauldron addition I had, because in mythology, Vidar, he has this really powerful leg, and he has this really powerful boot, and so I was like, okay, well, I really want Vidar to stand out in terms of I want all the gods to stand out in terms of their ability, and so I decided to kind of have his leg be sort of this weird, like tumor of power. It doesn't literally have a tumor, but all of his like strength is for some reason located in his leg, and it's so unbelievably strong. It needs to be like constantly, like basically strapped up with belts, kind of like how you put a belt around an arm and it cuts off circulation and you can't use it as well. That's basically what this guy's doing. He has to cut the circulation off to his leg so that it doesn't. He's not constantly walking around with just a radiant leg of absolute indomitable strength. So, and I really think it's just a cool little design. And then finally, we got the second main character, Trace's main rival in this story. Okay, Valley. He literally, this whole entire pose he's doing was ripped straight from another artist. You can look it up online. It was from a website talking about Norse mythology, and it's of Valley. And in the original interpretation, he's got a crow on his fist right here, a raven probably, and he's wearing a cloak of some sort. He's got no shirt on. And I didn't really care for the whole design of him, but I really liked the face they went with for Valley because it fit the younger, more punkish attitude that I want the character to have. Not even punkish. He's just kind of like not that bright. He's just like Thor and all the other sons of Odin, in that he's not that much of a thinker. He just goes out and he acts first and foremost, and it's because he just doesn't really care about pain or whatever. He can endure through everything and just smashes his head at a wall and he gets it through. And not in the brute sense of Thor where, oh, I'm so angry. He's literally just like, no, okay, I guess I'll go do that now, whatever. Doesn't even register it on an emotional scale. And that's because his mother was this woman who basically raised him to be an absolute for one purpose and one purpose only, which was getting vengeance upon Odin. But that's a whole other thing with his story. And yeah, but you can also see his overall armor. It has elements of the ruggedness, with that feather pauldron right there, and I think that shines through in his original roots of being this Midgardian, the son of a queen of a Midgardian tribe, okay, warrior tribe specifically, and he lived out in the wilderness for many years anyway. So him having that more rugged aesthetic there makes sense, but also his other clothes, because he ends up, basically being civilized by Snotra, this Aesir. He ends up wearing more refined garments because of her. So. But yeah, once again, I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, I'm such a great artist or whatever. This is all AI, dude, and it's all ripped from other stuff. But I think the design that I'm trying to communicate, I think, looks cool, and I really like the story and what I'm doing with it. But will I ever make it? Will I ever finish it? The world may never know.